When I was growing up, Umbro were the big name. They did the England jerseys, they did the Man United kits, they were on the feet of a lot of the top players. Roberto Carlos was scoring unbelievable worldies wearing Umbro boots. Now they kind of fell off a little bit. We won't get into that here, involving them being bought and sold and anyway. But Umbro have been on a little bit of a comeback tour for quite a while now, developing new technologies, releasing new boots, and really trying to push the boundaries and break into what has become quite a closed-off ecosystem of football boots, with really only Nike, Adidas, and Puma getting much attention, with Mizuno at the top end, New Balance as kind of your other choice, and Umbro want to be in there. This is their brand new Velocita model, and honestly, there's a lot to love here, with maybe a couple of areas that could be improved. So should you buy them? Well, that's what we're here to find out. What's up guys, I'm James, welcome to BootWizard. I'm sorry we haven't had any boot reviews for about 2 weeks now. I have been very sick. I probably still sound a little bit dodgy, but I have been able to give a few boots a little bit of a run around, and I'm gonna get some first impressions out. But not only that, we have some full playtest reviews coming soon, including on this brand new Umbro Velocita VI Pro. Beautiful looking football boots. I absolutely adore this giant Umbro logo on the back third there. So do get subscribed for that. Like the video, of course. If you can support us, head over to patreon.com/BootWizard, and I will leave a link to where you can purchase these if you wish to do so down in the top pinned comment. But let's jump straight into it by breaking out the scales. This is something I've been doing quite a lot recently, which is bringing out the scales, weighing the boots first, for two reasons. One is that the weight's not really that important as long as the boot fits you well, you feel good in it. And also, a lot of boots are doing unbelievable things by shaving down weight. And Umbro are no different. These ones coming in at 188 grams. So this is in a US size 8, 188. Now that more than competes with most of the boots you're going to pick up from Nike, from Adidas, from Puma, New Balance in terms of weight. There's only really things like the Ultra that are going to come in lighter. I do have a pair of Superflies behind me. If we pop them on the scales, they're coming in at 194 grams. So the difference is minimal, but in weight terms, and if you're looking for the lightest possible boot or a very lightweight boot, then these should absolutely be within your consideration. They're a speed boot, they're supposed to be light, they are light. Okay, let's take a look at the upper. Now, Umbro have got two main technologies that they've been talking about here. One is the vent knit, which is this central knitted portion here, and the other is the speed mesh, which yes, sounds like something that Adidas use, but it is a mesh, it is a speed boot. Speed mesh, can't really go wrong. So the clue is in the title for the speed mesh. It is, of course, a mesh-based upper, and you can see kind of the structure that has been built in, which is very similar to what a lot of companies are doing with their synthetic boots at the moment. They're building in a structure, an internal structure, and then giving it a top layer. This is a mesh base with mesh structure, and then it does still have an internal liner, which is going to provide you with a little bit more structure. How does that structure aid the responsiveness? Well, you know what? It's not bad. We do have to talk about the sole plate, which we'll get to shortly, which does impact the feeling of responsiveness in the boot, but the upper does not give an excessive amount, and it keeps you feeling like it's moving with you. It's still responsive. In terms of the lockdown, it's actually going to be better than you might expect. The laces run nice and deep, and this vent knit area, while you might think it's going to be a super stretchy area to help your foot get in and out like most other boots, it's really not. This is an area that, yes, is going to provide a bit of ventilation, but this is all about lockdown. It's not over stretchy at all, but this is about keeping the boot structured and keeping your foot locked in in place. The actual amount of volume through the boot as a whole is also excellent and really helps that lockdown. There's just not an excessive amount of volume anywhere and very little in the way of dead space, which for a speed boot are all massively positive in my opinion. In terms of touch on the ball, because of those multiple layers, this is not the thinnest boot that you're going to come across, so it's not super barefoot, but it definitely lends itself to that barefoot feel. Now, the way that I would describe that in striking the ball terms is if you were to take something like the Nemesis in terms of its punchy, pingy feel and just made the upper that little bit thicker, that might be about where you're at with the Velocita. And in a world where everybody seems to have gone synthetic with a lot of their top-end speed boots, you find that those boots tend to not be the softest. This being mesh, it is softer than most of those synthetics out of the box, does break in, and it's perfectly acceptable in terms of its softness. Now, we don't normally pitch and speak about sales or sale pricing. We always stick with the RRP when we're talking about value for money, but we are going to consider the sale pricing of these boots here, because these are £180 at full price, which puts them in the same bracket as, say, the Furon V6 and the Adidas Speedflow 0.1. So it really is competing with those top-end models. However, because they are Umbro and they tend to be a little bit less popular, you can actually pick these up on sale pretty quickly and in great size ranges, which is why they might be worth considering. You're looking at spending £130 to £140 for a pretty new colorway in a full range of sizes from a variety of locations. So you start to put these into the same bracket as things like maybe a pro level Nike Mercurial or a 0.2 level Speedflow. And realistically, that is the competition that these are in and around. Now, that doesn't mean that the Velocita is going to be for everyone, and it doesn't mean that it is without flaws. There are a couple of issues here and a couple of things that you do have to consider. The first one being the traction, the sole plate. This is very much going to be personal preference, what kind of surface you play on, but the Velocita sole plate is very short studs with a lot of conical studs. So we're conical down the medial side here, and we've got some kind of triangular arrowhead shaped studs which do run through the heel and up into kind of key push-off zones, but they are all on the short side. So if you play on nice FG pitches, or even if you play on an AG pitch, I actually think this would be an excellent HG or AG pitch sole plate. If you're playing on kind of muddier grounds or those FG pitches that aren't quite as nice, you might struggle, you might not quite get as much traction as you want from the sole plate. I've mentioned a couple of times that the structure on the upper is great and it leads to the boot going with you and feeling quite responsive. Unfortunately, the sole plate lets that down a little bit. There is a reasonable amount of flex and bend in the forefoot here, which allows you to get decent toe off. However, there's a weak point in the sole plate. Now, this is not a new thing. This is something that has been present on a couple of Umbro models, and it's down here. It just needs more strengthening through this section of the boot as it bends in this location. If you try and apply as much pressure as you can here, it starts to bend and crease here, which means that your foot is doing a lot of the structural lifting through this midfoot area. I personally prefer a boot that is stiff and stable through the midfoot and the heel, and this one is definitely on the more flexible side. Now, this might be okay for you. This might be the kind of thing that you're looking for. I do know people that want flexible sole plates. However, the bend here for me, it's the biggest problem with the boot, and I think that Umbro do need to look at strengthening up this middle area rather than having this level of flexibility that comes through the sole plate. Just think it lets the boot down a bit, where the rest of it has actually been quite good, especially, as I say, if you start comparing it to what else you can get at that sale price point that these come in at. Let's talk fit and comfort. As I said before, there's very little negative space and the boot fits quite tightly, which is always very nice. This vented area across the top here with its minimal amount of stretch does make the boot more difficult to get on than some other boots, and it also means that there's not a great amount of stretch in there for those of you that have wider feet. It has a reasonable width through the actual last, but you may struggle getting them on, and there's not a lot of stretch or adjustability around your midfoot. So if you do have a very wide foot, this isn't a boot that I would recommend for you. In terms of the length, I do find that these run slightly long, but maybe not quite enough in order for you to go down half a size. If you went down half a size, I could guarantee that those boots are more than likely going to be too tight for you. If you do have a narrow foot, down half a size will probably give you an absolutely perfect fitting boot, but I would say stick true to size, and there is going to be a tiny bit of distance, tiny bit more than you might expect at the end of the boot if you normally go for that kind of toe tight feeling. I do really like the fit through the midfoot and the forefoot. It wraps around my foot really nicely, makes me feel very connected to the boot and the ball, and that's probably my favorite thing about the boot as a whole. The heel is decent. There are some grip dots that run through the base of or the back of the boot, which I'm not sure I can get up on the camera for you. It's similar to what you might have expected from those old Adidas X19 models, but a little bit more rubberized. So if you want to get locked into the heel area, this is absolutely going to be fine. And then the heel counter, the heel depth feels absolutely fine as well. You don't feel like you're going to come out of it at any point, although I would like a little bit more padding in the heel here just to increase the comfort area or the comfort feeling. I feel like it's maybe a little bit stiff and there's a little bit too much pressure on the heel of the boot, or on my heel from the boot. I'll give you a little wrap up on this one, and I would say that this is a good boot with a couple of flaws, and if you can pick it up on sale and you're competing with those Nike Pros or those Adidas Point 2s, this is well worth your consideration, but definitely take into account what I said about the sole plate in order to make sure that you're getting a boot that's absolutely going to be right for you. If you do want to pick up a pair of these, then do hit the link down in the top pinned comment. Get subscribed to the channel, like the video, and if you can support us, please head to patreon.com/BootWizard. It is greatly appreciated. But that's all from me here today. I hope you've enjoyed it. Have a good one, and we'll see you soon.